Captain Jack, Lucky, Malone leaned against the console of his rickety salvage ship, the Stardust Rambler, and sighed. The derelict Xylothian vessel floating in front of him was a treasure trove of advanced tech, and he wasn't about to let it slip through his fingers. Sure, he'd been warned about Xylothian security systems, but warnings were more like suggestions in Jack's book. He adjusted his gloves, cracked his knuckles, and muttered, "All right, let's see what you've got, you overgrown glow stick." The airlock hissed open, and Jack stepped into the alien ship. The walls pulsed faintly with a bioluminescent glow, like the inside of a jellyfish. "Classy," he said, poking at a wall. It squished slightly under his finger. "EW. Okay, note to self, don't touch the walls. They're moist." He wandered deeper into the ship, his boots squelching on the organic floor. The place was eerily quiet, save for the occasional drip of something. Jack wasn't sure what it was, and he didn't want to know. He was here for one thing, the Xylothian quantum core, a piece of tech so advanced it could power a small planet. Or, more importantly, fetch a small fortune on the black market. After what felt like hours of wandering, Jack stumbled into a chamber that looked different from the rest. The walls were smoother, the glow brighter, and the air smelled faintly of lavender. "Bingo!" he whispered, spotting a glowing orb in the center of the room. "Hello, beautiful!" As he reached for the orb, the chamber suddenly came alive. The walls shifted, and a voice boomed in a language Jack didn't understand. "Oh," he said, taking a step back. "That's never good." Before he could react, the floor beneath him tilted, and he was flung into an adjacent room. He landed hard on his back, the wind knocked out of him. "Ow!" he groaned, sitting up. Note to self, Xylothian ships hate me. As his vision cleared, he realized he wasn't alone. Standing in front of him was a Xylothian, tall, elegant, and very, very naked. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, and her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. Jack blinked. Hi! The Xylothian, Princess Zyara, though Jack didn't know that yet, let out a shriek that sounded like a cross between a dolphin and a tea kettle. She crossed her arms over her chest and glared at him. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice dripping with fury. Jack held up his hands. Whoa, easy there, glowstick Barbie. I'm just here for the tech. I didn't mean to, interrupt your, whatever this is." Zyara's eyes narrowed. "You have violated a sacred ritual," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Not a clue," Jack said, standing up and brushing himself off. "But I'm guessing it's bad." Before Zyara could respond, the door burst open, and a squad of Xylothian guards stormed in. They were clad in sleek, bioorganic armor that looked like it had been grown rather than built. One of them pointed a weapon at Jack and barked something in Xylothian. "Yeah, I don't speak Squidward," Jack said, raising his hands again. "Can we do this in English? Or, Galactic Common?" The guards switched to a heavily accented version of Galactic Common. "You have seen the princess Unclothed. By our laws, you must marry her or face execution." Jack blinked. "Wait, what? Marriage or death? That's a hell of a first date." Zyara groaned, pinching the bridge of her nose. "This is a disaster," she muttered. "Of all the species in the galaxy, it had to be a human." "Hey, I'm standing right here," Jack said, offended. "And for the record, humans are great. We're resourceful, charming, and we make a mean lasagna." Zyara ignored him, turning to the guards. "Take him to the holding chamber. I need to consult with the council." As the guards dragged Jack away, he called over his shoulder. "So, is this a till death do us part thing, or can we get a prenup?" Zyara didn't respond, but the look on her face said it all. This was going to be a long 48 hours. Jack sat in the holding chamber, which was essentially a glorified jellyfish pod. The walls pulsed faintly, and the air smelled like a mix of lavender and regret. He leaned back against the squishy wall and sighed. "Well, this is just great," he muttered. "I finally find a Xylothian ship, and it turns into a bad rom-com." He was interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Sayara stepped in, now clad in a flowing, bioorganic gown that shimmered like starlight. She crossed her arms and glared at him. "We need to talk." "Sure thing, Princess," Jack said, sitting up. "What's on the agenda? Wedding colors? Honeymoon destinations? Or are we skipping straight to the part where you kill me?" Sayara sighed. "This is not a joke, human. Our laws are sacred, and you have violated them. The only way to avoid execution is for us to marry." Jack raised an eyebrow. "And let me guess, you're not exactly thrilled about that." "Thrilled?" Sayara repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I would rather marry a Grublakian slug." "Ouch," Jack said, clutching his chest. "That hurts, you know. I'm not that bad. I mean, sure, I'm a bit rough around the edges, but I've got a great personality." Sayara ignored him. "We have 48 hours to decide. If we do not marry, you will be executed, and I will be disgraced." Jack leaned back, crossing his arms. "Well, when you put it like that, marriage doesn't sound so bad. But let's be real, you're not exactly my type either. No offense, but you're a little shiny." Sayara's eyes narrowed. "And you are a primitive, chaotic mess." "Fair point," Jack said, holding up his hands. "So, what's the plan? Fake it till we make it?" Sayara hesitated, then nodded. "For now, we play along. But we will find a way out of this." Jack grinned. "All right, glowstick Barbie. Let's do this." As Sayara turned to leave, Jack called after her. "So, does this mean we're engaged? Can I call you my space wife?" Sayara didn't respond, but the door slammed shut behind her. Jack leaned back against the wall, a smirk on his face. "This is going to be fun." Jack was led into a grand hall that looked like it had been grown rather than built. The walls pulsed with a faint, rhythmic glow, and the air smelled faintly of something sweet and floral. Sayara stood at the center of the room, her bioorganic gown shimmering like liquid starlight. She looked every bit the regal princess, but the tension in her posture betrayed her discomfort. Jack, on the other hand, was doing his best to look casual, though the armed guards flanking him made that a bit difficult. "All right," Jack said, clapping his hands together. "What's first on the agenda? Do we exchange rings? Vows? Alien space goats?" Sayara shot him a glare that could melt steel. "This is not a joke, human. The ceremony of intertwined essences is a sacred ritual. It must be performed correctly, or the council will suspect foul play." "Intertwined essences, huh?" Jack said, raising an eyebrow. "Sounds intimate." Sayara ignored him, gesturing to a low table in the center of the room. On it sat 2 glowing orbs, each filled with a swirling, iridescent liquid. "We must drink from the chalice of unity," she said, her tone formal. "It symbolizes our bond." Jack picked up one of the orbs and gave it a shake. The liquid inside sloshed around, glowing brighter. "So, this is like alien wine? Do we toast to our future together? Maybe say something cheesy like, to infinity and beyond?" Sayara sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Just drink it, human." Jack shrugged and took a sip. The liquid was surprisingly sweet, with a faint tang that reminded him of citrus. "Not bad," he said, smacking his lips. "Tastes like space lemonade. Do they sell this stuff in bulk?" Sayara drank from her own orb, her expression stoic. "The next ritual is the dance of harmonious alignment," she said, setting her orb down. "We must move in sync to demonstrate our compatibility." Jack grinned. "A dance, huh? I hope you're ready to get down, princess." Sayara didn't respond, instead stepping into the center of the room. The floor beneath her feet began to glow, and a soft, melodic hum filled the air. Jack hesitated for a moment before joining her, his movements awkward and uncoordinated. "So, do I just follow your lead?" he asked, trying to mimic her graceful steps. "Yes," Sayara said, her voice tight. "But try not to step on my feet." Jack chuckled. "No promises." As they moved, Jack couldn't help but notice how close they were. Zyara's skin shimmered in the light, and her movements were fluid and hypnotic. For a moment, he forgot about the absurdity of the situation and just focused on her. "You know," he said, his voice softer now, "you're not so bad when you're not yelling at me." Zyara's steps faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "And you're not entirely insufferable," she admitted grudgingly. "But do not let it go to your head." Jack smirked. Too late. The dance ended, and Zyara stepped back, her expression unreadable. "The final ritual is the exchange of sacred vows," she said, her tone formal once more. "We must declare our commitment to each other in front of the council." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Commitment, huh? That's a big word. Do I get a say in this, or is it more of a repeat after me situation?" Zyara hesitated, then nodded. "You will repeat the vows after me. But be warned, the council will know if you are insincere." Jack shrugged. "All right, let's do this. Hit me with your best shot." Zyara took a deep breath and began. "I, Zyara of the Xylothian Empire, vow to honor and protect my bond with you, Jack Malone of Earth." Jack repeated the words, his tone surprisingly sincere. "I, Jack Malone of Earth, vow to honor and protect my bond with you, Zyara of the Xylothian Empire." Zyara's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly masked her surprise. "You actually mean that?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack shrugged. "Hey, if I'm gonna be stuck in this mess, I might as well commit to it. Besides, you're not so bad, glow-stick Barbie." Zyara's lips twitched, almost like she was fighting a smile. "You are impossible," she said, shaking her head. Before Jack could respond, the door to the chamber burst open, and a group of Xylothian officials entered. They were clad in elaborate, bioorganic robes, and their expressions were stern. One of them, a tall Xylothian with a long, flowing beard, stepped forward. "Princess Zyara," he said, his voice booming, "we have received word of a disturbance in the outer sectors. It appears there is a plot to undermine the sanctity of our laws." Zyara's eyes narrowed. "What kind of plot?" The official hesitated, then said, "There are those who seek to use your union with this human as a pretext for war. They believe it will weaken our empire." Jack whistled. "Well, that escalated quickly. So, what's the plan? Do we fight them? Run? Or just hope they get bored and go home?" Zyara turned to him, her expression serious. "We must expose the truth," she said. "If we can prove that this law is being manipulated, we can put an end to this madness." Jack nodded. "All right, let's do it. But just so you know, I'm not great with subtlety. If things go sideways, I'm probably gonna blow something up." Zyara sighed. "Somehow, I am not surprised." As they left the chamber, Jack couldn't help but feel a strange sense of excitement. Sure, he was in way over his head, but he'd always been good at thinking on his feet. And if there was one thing he knew for sure, it was that this was going to be one hell of a story. Jack and Zyara stood in the dimly lit control room of the Xylothian ship, surrounded by glowing consoles and holographic displays. The air was thick with tension, and the faint hum of the ship's systems filled the silence. Jack was busy tinkering with a modified toaster he'd smuggled in, much to Zyara's bewilderment. "You're telling me," Zyara said, her voice dripping with skepticism, "that this kitchen appliance is going to help us hack into the Xylothian security network?" Jack grinned, holding up the toaster like it was a trophy. "Oh, ye of little faith! This isn't just any toaster. It's a Mark 7 quantum toaster. I rigged it to bypass alien firewalls. Works like a charm." Zyara pinched the bridge of her nose, clearly questioning her life choices. "Of all the species in the galaxy, I had to get stuck with the one that turns cooking devices into hacking tools." "Hey, don't knock it till you try it," Jack said, plugging the toaster into a nearby console. The machine whirred to life, its coils glowing faintly. "See? It's already interfacing with the system. Give it a minute, and we'll have access to everything." Zyara crossed her arms, her bioorganic gown shimmering in the dim light. "And what exactly are we looking for?" Evidence, Jack said, his tone serious for once. If there's a plot to use our marriage as a pretext for war, there's gotta be something in the system that proves it. Emails, messages, secret files, something. Zyara nodded, though she still looked skeptical. And if we find nothing? Jack shrugged. Then we're back to square one. But I've got a good feeling about this. The toaster beeped, and a holographic screen flickered to life, displaying rows of encrypted files. Jack's grin widened. Bingo! Let's see what we've got. As they scrolled through the files, Zyara's expression grew darker. This is worse than I thought, she said, her voice low. The extremists have been planning this for months. They've manipulated the council, forged documents, and even staged attacks to frame humanity. Jack whistled. These guys don't mess around. But hey, at least we've got proof now. All we need to do is show this to the council, and we're golden. Zyara shook her head. It's not that simple. The extremists have allies in high places. If we go public with this, they'll deny everything and have us arrested, or worse. Jack leaned back, crossing his arms. So, what's the plan? We can't just sit on this. Zyara hesitated, then said, We need to expose them during the wedding ceremony. It's the only time the entire council will be gathered in one place. If we can present the evidence, then they won't be able to cover it up. Jack raised an eyebrow. You mean crash our own wedding? That's bold. I like it. Zyara's lips twitched, almost like she was fighting a smile. I'm glad you approve. But we'll need to be careful. One misstep, and this could all go very wrong. Jack nodded. Got it. No pressure or anything. The day of the wedding arrived, and the grand hall was filled with Xylothian officials, their bioorganic robes shimmering in the light. The air was thick with tension, and the faint hum of the ship's systems filled the silence. Jack stood at the center of the room, clad in a makeshift suit that looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts. Zyara stood beside him, her gown glowing faintly. The officiant, a tall Xylothian with a long, flowing beard, stepped forward. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Princess Zyara and Jack Malone of Earth, he said, his voice booming. Let the ceremony begin. As the officiant droned on, Jack leaned over to Zyara and whispered, You know, if we survive this, we should totally write a book. How to Crash Your Own Wedding, a Guide to Intergalactic Diplomacy. Zyara shot him a glare, but there was a hint of amusement in her eyes. Focus, human. The officiant turned to Jack. Do you, Jack Malone, vow to honor and protect your bond with Princess Zyara? Jack hesitated for a moment, then said, I do. But before we go any further, there's something you all need to see. The room fell silent as Jack pulled out the modified toaster and held it up. This little beauty has been busy, he said, his tone light but his expression serious. And it's got some interesting things to show you. The toaster beeped, and a holographic screen flickered to life, displaying the evidence they'd uncovered. The room erupted into chaos as the council members realized what they were seeing. This is preposterous, one of the extremists shouted, stepping forward. You expect us to believe this human's lies? Zyara stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. The evidence speaks for itself. These extremists have manipulated our laws and plotted to use my union with Jack as a pretext for war. They must be held accountable. The room fell silent as the council members exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, the officiant stepped forward, his expression grim. This is a serious accusation, he said. But if what you say is true, then we have no choice but to investigate. Jack grinned. Glad to hear it. Now, can we get back to the wedding? I was kinda looking forward to the cake. Zyara sighed, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips. You are impossible. As the extremists were led away, Jack turned to Zyara. So, what now? Do we still have to get married, or can we call it a day? Zyara hesitated, then said, The law still stands. But perhaps we can find a way to amend it. Jack nodded. Sounds like a plan. But just so you know, I'm keeping the toaster. Zyara rolled her eyes, but there was a hint of amusement in her expression. Somehow I knew you would. As they left the hall, Jack couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. Sure, he'd been thrown into an absurd situation, but he'd managed to come out on top. And if there was one thing he knew for sure, it was that this was just the beginning of one hell of a story. The Grand Hall was in chaos. Xylothian officials shouted over one another, their voices echoing off the glowing, organic walls. The evidence Jack and Zyara had uncovered was displayed on a massive holographic screen, casting an eerie light over the room. The extremists, now exposed, were being escorted out by guards, their faces twisted with anger and disbelief. Jack stood at the center of it all, his makeshift suit looking even more ridiculous under the harsh light. Zyara stood beside him, her bioorganic gown shimmering faintly, her expression a mix of relief and determination. "Well," Jack said, breaking the tension with his usual irreverence, "that went better than expected. I mean, no one got disintegrated, so I'm calling it a win." Zyara shot him a look, but there was a hint of amusement in her eyes. "This is far from overhuman. The Council will need to review the evidence and decide how to proceed. And the law still stands." Jack raised an eyebrow. "So what? We're still getting hitched?" Zyara hesitated, then shook her head. "Not necessarily. The Council may be willing to amend the law, given the circumstances. But it will take time." Jack grinned. "Time, huh? I've got plenty of that. Well, as long as no one tries to kill me in the meantime." Zyara's lips twitched, almost like she was fighting a smile. "I will do my best to ensure that does not happen." As the chaos in the hall began to settle, the officiant stepped forward, his expression grave. "Princess Zyara, Jack Malone, the Council has reached a decision." Jack crossed his arms, his tone light but his expression serious. "Let me guess, we're getting a lifetime supply of space lemonade?" The officiant ignored him, turning to Zyara instead. "The evidence you have presented is compelling. The Council has agreed to investigate the extremists' plot and review the law in question. Until then, your union is postponed." Jack let out a low whistle. "Postponed, huh? So, does that mean we're on a break? Because I've gotta say, I'm not great with breaks." Zyara sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "It means we have time to find a better solution. One that does not involve marriage or execution." Jack nodded. "All right, I can work with that. But just so you know, I'm keeping the toaster." Zyara rolled her eyes, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips. "Somehow I knew you would." Over the next few days, Jack and Zyara worked together to present their case to the Council. The evidence was overwhelming, and the extremists' plot was quickly unraveled. The Council, once skeptical, began to see the flaws in their ancient laws and the dangers of blind tradition. Zyara's influence played a key role in swaying their opinions, and Jack's unorthodox methods, like using the toaster to hack into secure systems, kept things interesting. "You know," Jack said one evening as they reviewed their notes, "this whole thing could have been a lot worse. I mean, sure, I almost got disintegrated, and you almost had to marry a human, but we made it work." Zyara looked up from her data pad, her expression thoughtful. "You are not what I expected, Jack Malone." Jack grinned. "Is that a compliment? Because it kinda sounds like a compliment." Zyara hesitated, then nodded. "Perhaps it is. You are chaotic and irreverent, but you are also resourceful and loyal. I have come to appreciate that." Jack's grin widened. "Well, shucks, princess. You're gonna make me blush." Zyara's lips twitched, almost like she was fighting a smile. "Do not let it go to your head." The final council meeting was held in the Grand Hall, now restored to its former glory. The extremists had been dealt with, and the law was under review. Jack and Zyara stood before the council, their partnership, though unconventional, having proven its worth. "Princess Zyara, Jack Malone," the officiant said, his tone formal but not unkind. "The council has reached a decision. The law in question will be amended. No longer will the penalty for seeing a Xylothian unclothed be marriage or execution. Instead, It will be treated as a cultural misunderstanding, to be resolved through dialogue and education. Jack let out a low whistle. Well, that's a relief. No more shotgun weddings, huh? Zyara shot him a look, but there was a hint of amusement in her eyes. This is a significant step forward for our people. Thank you, Council. The officiant nodded. It is thanks to your efforts that this change was possible. You have shown us the value of adaptability and the dangers of blind tradition. As the meeting adjourned, Jack turned to Zyara. So, what now? Do we go our separate ways, or do we keep this whole partnership thing going? Zyara hesitated, then said, I believe there is still much we can learn from each other. And I would not be opposed to continuing our alliance. Jack grinned. All right, Glowstick Barbie. Let's see where this takes us. As they left the hall, Jack couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. Sure, he'd been thrown into an absurd situation, but he'd managed to come out on top. And if there was one thing he knew for sure, it was that this was just the beginning of one hell of a story. Zyara glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. You are unlike anyone I have ever met, Jack Malone. Jack grinned. Yeah, I get that a lot. But hey, that's what makes me special. Zyara's lips twitched, almost like she was fighting a smile. Do not let it go to your head. As they walked away, the glowing walls of the Xylothian ship casting an otherworldly light around them, Jack couldn't help but feel a strange sense of excitement. Sure, he was still a long way from home, but he'd found something unexpected along the way, a partner, a friend, and maybe even a little bit of purpose. And if there was one thing Jack Malone knew for sure, it was that the galaxy was full of surprises.